Ustad had also said that Maddie had not brought the ghost with her, or he might have spoken with it. This was because the ghost wasn't Pribumi. Of course, he may have discovered, as I had, that the ghost was Chinese, but somehow I think it was all leading up to the ghost being British. Pa Ustad was just like the Indonesian men who approached Maddie for casual sex, refusing to believe that she actually prefers bullets. Of course, Maddie has very limited experience with Indonesian males, or that such a woman, exuding sensuality, was faithful to her husband. You see, Maddie is somewhat jealous and possessive, the upside being that she's faithful and protective towards me. Her jealousy is partly fueled by her neighbours, including Bar Annie, who spotted Maddie putting lipstick-stained tissues on my pillow at a party we held one New Year's Eve. Like most women who exude sensuality, Maddie is completely unaware of hers and certainly not putting it on. In fact, this is probably what makes women like Maddie so alluring. One boyfriend told her that when she wears skirts, they're either too short or too long, but that's how Maddie likes them. This isn't a strategy to look bleep, it's simply her choice, which she is very protective of, a somewhat radical stance in a Muslim country. Not that Maddie would ever see it in political terms. Indeed, Maddie has always seen Julia Perez as an inspiration, more so than politicians. Perez had apologised to the Indonesian Ulama Council, MUI, for being born too bleep when ridiculously accused of pornography. Julia Perez died of cervical cancer whilst I was writing my story, and Maddie sat on our bed and cried. Maddie crying came as no surprise, but when her reclusive younger sister called to say that she was also crying, I realised that to Maddie, Julia Perez was a modern-day Cartini. Indeed, it reminded me of my surprise when so many of my feminist friends in the UK grieved the passing of Princess Diana. Years later, I found that the kindly lady had come to the clinic with a similar problem, and after unsuccessful treatment had moved into the clinic. Slowly, with the Pa Ustad's assistance, the lady had learnt to successfully orgasm. So it would seem that I'd paid $300 to a man who had designs on making my wife his bleep slave. My 8 or 10 orgasms quip to Pa Ustad would have been particularly useful, as if Maddie's Indonesian male pursuers actually knew what she was like in bed, they would be scared off immediately, leaving her to bullets and the devil, Iblis, their macho personas irreparably hurt until the next pretty girl walks by. He was only a Pa Ustad, nevertheless I was a little shocked and somewhat disturbed. Also disturbing is the story Maddie tells of being asked to attend a meeting at the Inspectorate of Religious Affairs, where her understanding of Islam was questioned, despite the Inspectorate's function being to audit the ministry. Maddie was asked to return for further instruction, but was clearly grossly affronted by the challenge, not least as it seemed like a challenge to her faith, which, like me, she believes only Allah has the right to pass judgment on. Indeed, this is fundamental to our understanding of Islam, but also that she knew it was leading to a demand for bleep favours or money, and most probably both. Maddie's nene had taught her various Kajawan fasting techniques, of which Maddie favoured total abstinence for 24 hours, nugebling. Maddie is also not permitted to eat a variety of foods, along with her Islamic abstinence of pork. I had said that I would join Maddie in her fasting, had already identified that I should fast on my Javanese birthday, which is Minggu Juluwangi, and somewhat auspicious. It's the holy day dedicated to Dewi Dano, or the lake goddess, so Pa Anggabaya was right, I am from water. Unfortunately, despite not struggling during Ramadan, I simply didn't have the willpower for Javanese fasting. Indeed, I embrace Ramadan fasting with zeal, never stealing a snack when no one is looking, as I've seen so many Indonesians do. Just as Indonesians never believe me to be Muslim, even when convinced that I am, they still find it incredible that I should fast. Nevertheless, each time Maddie Neglebleng fasted, the possession would go for a while, and my powers increased dramatically. I suppose the lack of belief that I should be a Muslim and take it seriously reflects the few Westerners in Indonesia who take their forced conversion seriously. I have never seen another bule in a masjid, apart from a young Australian tourist I met near Sanur. I also remember, only weeks after Professor Darwin's conversion, him ordering Hawaiian pizza with real ham in a bar on Jalan Fatalayan. When I questioned him, he told me that it was what was in our hearts and how we led our lives that mattered. Profound thoughts indeed. Of course, Professor Darwin's conversion to Islam is another of those diversions, which maybe one day I should write about, but whilst terribly amusing, adds nothing to my tale. Whilst Chung seemed prepared to accept that Maddie was a good person and that he really should not cause her any harm, he kept repeating that she was Javanese. It would seem that the Javanese were seen as perpetrators of these riots, although I suspect this was simply shorthand for pribumi. It also seemed to me that the Javanese from the Jogja region were the least likely to be involved, and that the Sunda were the more likely perpetrators. Indeed, there is substantial, albeit disputed evidence, that much of the violence was perpetrated by Preman, gangster vigilantes, and especially the Front Prambella Islam and Primuda Pancasila. At the time of writing, our Chinese governor, Ahok, had just lost the election and had been imprisoned for 2 years, despite reports that the anti-Ahok demonstrations were made up with people from Java. I had only been aware of Sunda people from Java Barat and Banten. In other words, not people registered to vote in Jakarta. Chung was from Jakarta and therefore would make the distinction between the Javanese and the Sunda of Java Barat and Banten. But Indonesians from the other islands, particularly to the east, the Javanese simply signifies all that is wrong with Indonesia. When I visit Bali, both Bules and the Balinese find it incredible that I live in Java, which they believe to be the centre of conservative Islam and authoritarian attitude. I need to keep some balance in reporting what others have said, as many of my middle-class pre-Boomy friends are strong supporters of Suharto's son-in-law, who they see as the natural successor, Ratu Adil, to the order, national pride and economic miracle created by Suharto. On reflection, they all live in Tangerang, Banten, although I refuse to consider any spatial link with their political views. Although Banten and Java Barat are now strongholds of support for Suharto's son-in-law and conservative Islam, many Indonesians will argue that the country is so diverse with so many problems that there is a need for a strong man to lead it, and few could doubt Suharto or his son-in-law's credentials here. I lean towards more conspiratorial theories, which suggest that these problems are created by the strongmen and their supporters to fashion a power vacuum for them to fill. In the UK, I shun such conspiratorial theories, but since arriving in Indonesia, my experience tells me that the more convoluted and bizarre they appear, the more credence I need to give them. We persuaded Pahaji's son to take us to Jogja so that Maddie could buy some more artificial flowers and I could buy some more oils and jimmat. On the way back, we called at Maddie's second brother, who also lives near Chandy. He and his wife were lovely people with twin sons, one of them whom lived and worked at a convenience store close by our home in South Jakarta. Both Maddie's brother and his wife look much older than they actually are. Their home is made from bamboo and bamboo matting with an earth floor, and the poorest I had been in. He owns no agricultural land and survives on what he can grow in his garden. We brought with us bags full of food and household goods from Carrefour in Jogja, which were warmly appreciated. He and his wife are the complete opposite to the Dukan brother and his wife, and are devout Muslims. I hadn't been there long when the ghost of an old lady appeared. We began talking and she wanted to know why she hadn't seen Maddie's mother recently. I explained and she asked me to send her her regards and ask her to visit when she felt strong enough. Like Maddie's mother, she wanted me to help her family, which I promised to do. So when we meet, I always place some money in the palm of this brother's hand. These knots are slowly untangling, meaning that Paerte will now be facing knots of his own. For some time now we have been aware that he and Ibu Erte are abusing their position as kampung leaders, asking us for money for fictitious improvements or activities at the Mashola. So we have been financially contributing to a Dukan who is trying to kill us, Sahir. Certainly before Ramadan, when he gave us a proposal asking for contributions towards the Mashola, which is being converted into a Nahandatul Ulama Masjid for Ramadan, I took the contributions to the owner, Tukung, of the nearby Warung, who was an imam at the Mashola, and he seemed to know exactly why I had come to him and not given the money to Paerte, as I was expected to do so. This feeling was reinforced when Tukun Warung delivered a proposal for Korban and not Paerte, as was normal. I should explain that to a Sunni, an imam is a little like a lay preacher, so especially at a Mashola, there will be many imam, with the role taken by whoever is the most appropriate at the time. This lack of formal structure and hierarchy being one of Islam's most attractive features to me. Let me apologise at once to all feminists and indeed all female readers. I should have said the most appropriate male, as this is normally a male-only role. Despite it being a male-only role, a significant chunk of the Turkish budget for vocational education is spent on training female imams at Imam Hatip schools, a small proportion of whom are anxiously received in Germany. I became aware that I had a series of dreams, almost like compartments. If accessed randomly, they appear random, but if accessed chronologically and in pairs, they begin to make some sense. Maybe the final compartment was a dream in which I was wandering around a town in the Welsh marshes, possibly Wrexham, one rainy evening. I was wearing a black gamis and black kufi, as I had been invited to the local Islamic society, but for some reason did not feel welcome. Masjids all over Indonesia are wonderful, welcoming places, and I would have no hesitation in praying in a Shia or even a Ahmadiyya masjid. After writing this, I attended the Islamic Centre by Manchester University and found its Shia congregation to be much more hospitable than the Tablighi Jamaat adherents in Manchester Central Mosque. But this was an Islamic society and not a masjid, and it was in the UK, not Indonesia. Non-Muslims may be surprised to find that many Muslims in the UK, especially the North, follow an evangelical sect known as Tablighi Jamal. They believe that we should dress as Muhammad did, or at least how 20th century Indians believed Muhammad dress, albeit based on old but critically not contemporary accounts. Have a beard but no moustache, and into the toilet with our right foot. I hold no negative views about their practices, even some admiration, save for their evangelism. Not least as the evangelical tradition is not strong, even forbidden within Islam. They see me as a prime target to be shown a true path. In fact, many Arabs and Pakistanis believe that Indonesians are not real Muslims after all, despite Indonesian Muslims outnumbering them. To shelter from the rain, I entered a pub, something I would never do in Muslim attire, unless I'd just been called a Muslim by a group of evangelists in half-mast trousers, another of Tabighi Jamal's idiosyncrasies. Nor would I take a copy of Al-Quran into a pub, and certainly not leave it there, even though we're asked to believe this about the Al-Qaeda pilots blamed for 9/11. I ordered a beer, and an attractive middle-aged lady came and sat by me, and we appeared to be getting on well. I went to the toilet and was jumped on by two men. I beat them off, but maybe was overzealous with one, possibly killing him. I then was attacked a second time by a single assailant, and again I won. Were there two men, or was there a third? Or was it simply the second assailant recovering and attacking me once? Another possible explanation is that I have considered that these events are in the mind. Of course, all could simply be in the mind, but that's not the point I'm making, at least not here. No, what I mean is that Bob was sent to my mind as a test of my honesty and character, although there is also the consideration that could all the ghosts that I have been aware of and my revelations have been sent by a spirit or spirits or some other paranormal force. Most Muslims believe that all my experiences have been sent by jinn, who simply behave as ghosts. However, it seems to me to be a Western preoccupation in creating a paranormal hierarchy of ghosts, demons, lesser gods, Satan, etc. There may even be other entities, possibly legends like Nira Blorong, who take on the attributes of ghosts of dead people. Certainly Pa Angabaya is non-committal on my visitations and revelations, but I have always been told to go with my feelings, which are very real, so maybe everyone's journey to enlightenment is a personal journey based on their life's experiences and values. Indeed, I believed that I have tapped into what Jung describes as collective unconsciousness. So whilst collective, I am bound to interpret them with reference to my beliefs and my life's experience. This would explain my much more liberal interpretation when compared to Martin's Old Testament God. Do not cry for help if the dead surround you, otherwise the living will take flight, and they are your only bridge to the day. Live the life of the day, and do not speak of mysteries, but dedicate the night to bringing about the salvation of the dead. Carl Jung from the Red Book. Individual's route to God. Beware of confining yourself to a particular belief and denying all else, for much good will elude you. Indeed, the knowledge of reality would elude you. Being in yourself a matter for all forms of belief, for God is too vast and tremendous to be restricted to one belief or another. Ibn Arabi. The more circuitous we make our submission to God, the further we may move away from him or her. Politicians in many Muslim countries confuse Islam with authoritarianism, verging on fascism. So no wonder Westerners are confused. But do not confuse religion and unconditional love with the abuse of power And do not use your faith for your own gain. It is better simply to submit and to thank God. Indeed, if the power I have witnessed is based on the sum total of the belief or veneration in a construct or objects, then the Abrahamic God is the most powerful, only weakened by the divisions between Jews, Christians and Muslims, and within each religion itself. Whilst many Kajawans believe that all gods are one, J. Gosti. As we have sought relief across the whole of the island of Java, each of our helpers attempted to impress upon us their own interpretation of Islam, rather than seeing Islam as Islam and simply a different path to the Abrahamic God. But is this the belief in our own godlike nature that brings us closest to these constructs, which is the very reason to stay away from such thoughts? If you've got this far with listening to me, you at least enjoyed something of what I said. I do hope that you have. And it actually was extracts from 3 books that I've written that you can find on this channel, The Magic of Java. I'd really love you to subscribe and hit the button. And yeah, please listen to all 3 of my books. But above all, thank you for listening to this.